Hello and welcome to a Blood Red podcast special on three players that Liverpool could look to sign in the summer to advance their forward line for Jurgen Klopp. Very shortly, I'll be speaking to Leipzig reporter and former teammate of Jurgen Klopp at Mainz, Guido Schafer, about the incredibly exciting Cristopher and Nkunku. I've also got the other Bundesliga podcast, Tom Midler, to speak about Karim Adeyemi at Red Bull Salzburg, with the Reds, Borussia Dortmund and more all said to be sniffing around him. But first, as you'll be able to see if you are watching along on YouTube, I've got journalist Paul Chapman on the line from Canada to speak about Jonathan David, who is, of course, currently in France with Lille. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. Is Jonathan David a name, do you think, that should excite Liverpool fans?
Well, I mean, that's the, what do you want to put a tag on it, Matt? Is that your 30 million pound question? I think there's a certain segment when you say Liverpool fans, you know, you're a journalist like me. You see the absolute breadth of the spectrum in terms of how people are. And there is a segment of the supporter group that won't be happy unless it's a Kylian Mbappe or an Erling Haaland. And I think you have to understand Jurgen Klopp and Michael Edwards, or, you know, certainly Julian Ward moving forward, what their targets are. And the FSG model is not to go out like Real Madrid and spend a ton of money on it. So what does Jonathan David represent? Well, he represents potential, and he represents a proven track record where he's been getting better and better every year, probably at a better price point than you would think. But, you know, I think if we look at the market, Dusan Vlahovic just, you know, moved for an insane amount of money. And this time last year, he was talking a young player with decent numbers, and he was being talked about as a guy who might be on Liverpool's radar. So, you know, I've been following David, obviously, because he's Canadian. And, you know, the link started with Liverpool a couple of years ago. But now, if you search on social media, Jonathan David, all you see are Chelsea and Arsenal links. I mean, Arsenal fans are absolutely convinced they're going to get him. So, you know, should he excite them? Yeah, I think when you look at Diogo Jota type signing very similar, not necessarily in the style of play, but under the radar, not the top name, whatever fee, if they were to get him, people were to decide on, they might think it's too much. But I think if Jurgen Klopp wants this player, and certainly he has the raw skills that you think he could mold, then yeah, you should be excited at the prospect of a striker in that age group with those core skills in terms of where they could end up.
I think a little bit like Diogo Jota in terms of the kind of positions that he can play. He can play in all three roles, but would it be fair to say he's sort of become a bit more of a central striker in recent times? That's kind of what it seems to me without having seen a lot of him.
Yeah, absolutely he is. I would say this, I mean, certainly the role he plays for Lille has been almost as the secondary striker, playing a little bit behind the front man, but that's in a two. I think if you look at how Liverpool would employ him, he has the speed to play in all those three positions. The one thing that I would question is he hasn't been so much of a link-up man. He's more someone who will find space when his strike partner has pulled up space or opened up some space for him, and he'll be that guy who finds that extra yard or two of space, and then if the ball happens to come to him, he doesn't score what I would call beautiful goals. He's not going to be a Mohamed Salah. I mean, who is? But you're not going to see a highlight of him sitting down three defenders, going through five guys, blasting it into the far corner. I think he's more a player who, it would almost like Jota, exactly, that would find space, be there. And even though he's not big, he is pretty good in the air. When you look at how he plays for Canada, maybe a little more concern there. He's been the central guy. And if you look at his goal scoring record, he's kind of loaded up on teams like Suriname and hasn't really scored. I mean, CONCACAF's got to be honest, a brutal region, but he hasn't scored necessarily against the big boys in teams like the US or Mexico. But he's a very productive player. And as someone is, you know, you may see the pictures behind me. I got an old, there we go, Bill Shankly autograph I got in 1974 at Woolworths before my family moved to Canada. You know, I know what the Liverpool expectations are. I know the relationship the fans have with their players. And I think if you look at where he is and what he could be, you just have to trust the brain trust with him. My questions about David going forward will be, what's the price going to be? And will Liverpool reach that limit where they're like, nope, doesn't work for us, and move on to the next target?
You mentioned before the sort of interest from Arsenal and one or two others. I mean, does it feel like the right time for Jonathan David to move on this coming summer? Or do you think there's a chance that he might stay another year at Lille and continue that development?
I think that would be a mistake. And I think you have to... I think you have to really understand the place with the national team to sort of feel how that would be a fit from going forward. Now, I have to admit, I don't know the man well. I don't, I can't get inside his head. With a lot of players, it may just purely come down to money and, what are his wages going to be? But Canada has made the World Cup once, and that was in 1986 in Mexico. And famously, they didn't even score a goal. While Canada they're in first place in CONCACAF qualifying. They haven't qualified yet, but they're in first place in the group. They're ahead of Mexico. They're ahead who they have beaten. They're ahead of the U.S. And obviously, the World Cup is next year. So you've got to look at his standing and what he wants, what he wants to achieve and where he wants to play. And again, money is important. But if he's looking at getting playing time, would you be guaranteed that at Chelsea? Well, no. You're not guaranteed that at Liverpool. But at the same time, the track record for young players who come in, good signings, yes, you might have to be patient, like an Andy Robertson, like a Fabinho, and wait for your, not be an instant starter on day one. But I think the track record for and how Klopp has used young players and used signings is you get in the team, you'll play. And so if he is looking forward to the World Cup, this is it's the country will go nuts when Canada finally qualifies, and he recognizes that. So I think if he looks for a personal fit, Liverpool would be better than some of those others. Do you want to play in the Champions League? I mean, I know he can achieve that with Lille. He's not going to achieve it at Arsenal. Sorry to Guy Clark there. But, he can play at the highest level, compete for trophies, be on like a massive stage, and really hone his game under a great coach if he wants to get into, or great manager, as you would say, headed into the World Cup. So personally, I think it's a great fit. I think it's not a guaranteed success, but I like Klopp's track record. I like the way Liverpool have recruited. I like the other players around them. I also have to say, Matt, I really like his age too. One of my biggest concerns with Liverpool as a fan is, we all know about Mohamed Salah's contract, but Firmino, Mane, same position, same age. Yes, there's Harvey Elliott there. He's been shifted a little bit more into a midfield role. Origi, Minamino, futures up in the air. Cade Gordon, very, very young. So I think getting a player in that 21, 22, 23 age range really suits where this team is right now. COVID may have changed their grand scheme in terms of how they have their transfer plans and where they want to move in terms of acquiring talent, but he kind of ticks all the boxes. So if they can agree on a price, I think it would be a very good fit, both for him and for the club.
In terms of the price, it's kind of been said that it would be 35 million. That seems to be what's coming from France anyway, which does seem a pretty Liverpool deal, doesn't it? It does feel like if they are going to sign someone, it is going to be in that price sort of range. Is he worth that, do you think? Is that about right for him at the moment?
Did we think Diogo Jota was worth 41? I will admit, at that time, I thought that's too much money. And now you look at even how the market has moved forward, and you see, it's funny, the age seems to torque the price more than the potential in many ways. If you're going to pay for a player like a Thiago, who is world class, going to come in and help you compete right away, you accept that it's a bit of a lower price. The FSG model is certainly, you at least want the option to sell on. So I think that's a fair price. I absolutely do when I look at the money that other players are going for. And I'll also say this, I do think that being from Canada drags the price down a little bit. We're just not known as a football nation. Now, obviously, Alfonso Davies, who was linked with Liverpool at the time, Bayern got him for literally a song. I mean, they got him for, I think, if the conversion is right, for around £8-9 million. And now what could you sell Alfonso Davies for? So, I think David obviously plays a different position, but he's a similar player, a little bit older, obviously, but it's in that same mold. I think people look at it and say, if the same player had the same skills, but he was Brazilian and he just went by Jonathan, he'd probably be commanding a figure upwards of 60. So, I think when you look at the numbers that have been kicked around, I mean, my Lord, you only just have to look at Everton's transfer sheet and you'd say, yeah, £30 million, that's more than fair.
And just to finish off then, in terms of him being from Canada, being from North America, how important or how much of a difference do you think it would make in terms of sort of off the pitch? Obviously, Liverpool is big in that part of the world. Do you think that would come into it at all? Would that be another sort of bonus to the transfer, if you like, if Liverpool were to go for him?
Absolutely. I can tell you, as you know, I'm obviously a fair bit older than you, but I can tell you, after we moved from Liverpool to Canada, we had season tickets to the Vancouver Whitecaps. And, you know, the NASL had been more of a retirement league, and the Whitecaps were a bit different. And they had Bruce Grobler and they had Peter Beardsley here before they moved to Liverpool. So there's an element to the name and the club in this country that does appeal to people. And David, that's, you know, it's a very astute point from you, because David, born in Brooklyn to Haitian parents, moved to Haiti, then moved to Ottawa when he was, I believe, 8 or 9. He never wanted any part of North American football. He wanted to go to Europe. He was a European fan. He recognized that the Champions League, that the Premier League, the Bundesliga, whatever it was, that's where he wanted to play. That's where he wanted to make his name. That's been his dream, along with making the World Cup. So, you know, he has a chance to achieve both of those. But ever since he was a child and was excelling in the Canadian youth leagues, his focus has been on playing in Europe. And if your eyes are on Europe, Matt, what better place to be than a Liverpool? Because you've got the European pedigree. It's the big league. The money is there. The stage is there. The audience is there. So I do think that fits in. It all fits well. Now, whether, you know, again, the finances can be agreed, that's what it comes down to. But to me, it looks like there's a very good chance of this happening.
Yeah, it certainly makes a lot of sense. And of course, he was on Liverpool's list when they signed Diogo Jota a couple of years back. So certainly one they have been keeping an eye out for. Paul, thank you very much for your time and your insight. Really interesting stuff.
Anytime, Matt. I'm a big fan of all your podcasts. I've said it. I'd let you know I walk my dog and I listen to them all, even doily. I will give you one little bit of information. I do know about David, though. I talked to some people in his camp. He starts every day off with a big bowl of bran flakes.
And that is as good a place as any to finish off. Paul, thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day.
I'm joined next by RB Leipzig reporter Guido Schafer to talk about Cristopher Nkunku, who has scored 17 times this season and assisted another 13 in Germany. Guido, it's good to speak to you again. We've spoken about plenty of players in the past, but never about Cristopher Nkunku. How good a season is he having this season?
Now, Cristopher Nkunku, I don't know if I understand you right. Cristopher Nkunku, for me, is the best player in this moment in the Bundesliga. He's famous. He's so skillful, and I think he's a quite perfect package now. And you asked me for Liverpool or for Chelsea or for which team? Man U?
Yeah, for Liverpool. For Liverpool.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I think he's a perfect player for Jurgen Klopp, and I'm sure he's also on the list of many big clubs, and for sure also Liverpool. And I think Manchester United think about him. I think it's not. I love him. I love Cristopher Nkunku, not only because of his skills. He's fast. He's technical, perfect, and he has a good brain, but also his character. And since he's a young father, I think his life is complete, and therefore he can bring very good performance on the field, on the pitch.
How would you describe how he plays? What kind of footballer is he when he's on the pitch for Leipzig?
I think he's a little bit like Sadio Mane, and also a little bit like Naby Keita. I told you he's technical, very, very perfect with the left foot, with the right foot. Also able to make a header, and his technique is brilliant. Is brilliant as also he's a tough player, and a great adventure from Cristopher Nkunku is he's never injured, never. He plays every match, and every match he's fit. And yes, I think if Liverpool have the choice to get him, they have to do it for sure.
What would you say is his best position? Does he play through the middle? Does he play on one of the wings? Where does he tend to play, and where is he best?
He can play every position in the offense. He play also as a forward in Leipzig, and as an offense midfield player. And I think his best performances is for him when he is able to make like a free spirit in the on the pitch. And in Leipzig, he is a free spirit. I'm not sure that is possible in the Premier League to make this for him. But when you have a kind of a style of a free spirit of a man who can make whatever he wants, then he's very, very dangerous, very, very skillful, and I think he's the right man for the Premier League. Yes.
Yeah, you say he's the right man for the Premier League. Is he kind of a strong physical player? Do you think he'd be able to come across in that kind of way physically? Would he be ready to play in England?
I think so. Yes. He's only, I think, 65 kilos. He's not so heavyweight a man, but he's a good muscles. A very, very athletic man, and he's also very intelligent in the when it's go in the hard tackle. When an opponent come with a hard tackle, he see this and he make a little bit a jump, and therefore also he's never injured. I think he's physically also able to play there.
Yeah, definitely. He's been good in the Champions League as well. We've seen him against obviously Manchester City and PSG. Did he stand out in those matches as well?
Pardon me?
Did he stand out? Was he a good performer in the Champions League as well this season?
Yes. He was. I think he was the best player in this season. He is the best player, and he's playing his best season in his career. And he made the difference in the matches also, and especially in the Champions League matches against Paris, against Manchester City, and I think also Pep Guardiola saw him. And I think he also fall in love with Nkunku. And in my opinion, he's able to play in every team in this world, and he's able to make every team better. But he's expensive. He has no exit clause in his contract, and the contract will end in summer 2024. Good contract for Leipzig.
Do you know roughly how much Leipzig would want, or is there no fee? They just want as many teams to come for him as possible so the price can go up?
I think, the Leipzig want to work with him to the end of this life. He's so important, and I think without Nkunku, I think they play in the Bundesliga in the end of the bottom, on the bottom of the ranking. He's so important. He's the most important player for Leipzig. But I think it's also logical for Nkunku to make the next step in his career after 3 brilliant years in Leipzig. And I think when Klopp or Tuchel or Pep Guardiola, when they say, okay, 50,000 million euros or 60 million euros, 60 million euros, I think it's 65 million pound, I don't know. Then it's possible that RB Leipzig say, okay, Christo, thank you for your work, thank you for your love, and now it's okay, you can go, you make your next step, and all of them are happy then.
Just to finish then, is this season his best season? Have you seen a lot more from him? What's the difference between before this season and then this season? What is it that's changed for him?
He's so self-confident player. And the greatest problem for the opponents is that when you play against Christo Nkunku, you don't know what he's doing in the next situation, and he knows it's also not. That is very, very difficult to play against such players, and think quite like a little bit like Sadio Mane when you go in the dribbling, and very, very good, and I'm gonna say he's quite perfect. He's a quite perfect player, and also in the brain, very clear. He don't drive 5 or 6 cars, only 1 car, and no Rolex watch. No, he's not like me.
Yes, no, he's certainly a big player to watch out for, I think, in the future. It'll certainly be interesting to see where he ends up and if it is Liverpool. But Guido, thank you very much for joining me. Really appreciate it again.
Welcome. All the best.
And I'm joined last but not least by Tom Midler from the other Bundesliga podcast to chat about Karim Adeyemi, who is, of course, at Red Bull Salzburg, a club that Liverpool have taken a look at plenty of times in the past. Tom, welcome back to the show. We've spoken at least once before about Karim Adeyemi earlier this season. We're a little bit further along the line during the campaign now, though. So how is his season shaping up? Is he still impressing you as much as what he was the last time we spoke?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me back on. It was nice to chat with you a little while back and look at Adeyemi, who is just coming into, well, he's been having a very good season. That is still the case. He's on 14 goals, bagged a hat-trick in December as well in the league. I think it was his first ever top flight, professional hat-trick, actually. All the goals sort of knocked in from in and around the 6-yard box. So he showed a bit of a goal poacher's side to himself, which he's displayed from time to time, but it's not really the first thing you'd say about Karim Adeyemi. So that was another little bonus for him, and it got him through after what had been a bit of a tough patch without scoring. It was only a few games, really, but when you're playing at Red Bull Salzburg and you're the main striker, you pretty much expect to score all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for those who've maybe forgotten or not listened to the previous shows that we've done together, what would you sort of say is his typical playing style? What kind of forward is he?
Well, the first thing you notice about him is his lightning pace. You can say that about quite a few players, but Adeyemi is exceptionally fast, and we've seen it time and time again in the Austrian Bundesliga, but now also in the Champions League. He just can absolutely outstrip defenders. Salzburg play very direct, very quick transitional play. Basically, they look to win the ball back and just go forward with it. And having a striker like they did in Dhaka last season, and now with Adeyemi for the last couple of years, who can chase and get onto the end of those, that's a real benefit for any team who try to play this sort of very modern style of direct attacking football. But he's got a bit more to him than that, because he's actually a winger by trade as well. So he can play on any of the front three, sort of traditional front three positions, which makes him the hot property that he is at the moment, the most valuable player in Austria for sure, the most valuable player at Salzburg. And when he's got the skills to play on the wing, he's got the skills on the ball to play on the wing, he's got the skills in the centre to be a direct threat as a centre forward. But he's picking up that vision, that awareness as well of knowing how to be in the right place at the right time. So a very dangerous all-round weapon anywhere in the front three.
And in terms of his sort of game, then you mentioned that he's quite fast. He's good on the transition in terms of the counter attack and that kind of thing. Is he sort of involved in the build up play as well, or is he very much a player who's the final touch to a move?
Well, I think he doesn't drop back in the sense of trying to win the balls as much as some players do. I mean, there was I suppose a Liverpool comparison last time was with Firmino and the way that Firmino can drop in and sort of give another outlet. He does that to some extent, but it's not really a speciality of his game. He brings those other skills in the fact that, as I mentioned before, he's just as good as a centre forward, as a player who's willing to take people on. A weakness of his has often been said that his assist statistics are not as good perhaps as they might be for somebody who plays so many minutes up front and gets so many goals. He seems to struggle a little bit with creating for teammates, but I think that's a bit of a statistical quirk which is probably going to work itself out as his career progresses. But you don't really see him so involved. But then when you look at Salzburg, the type of build-up play that they have, it's also it's things that you really need professional analysts to know how it's working, because these things are done a little bit differently at Salzburg. It's more about positioning relative to players, and perhaps even without being involved on the ball or in the passing lanes, you can still be involved in making the system work. And I'm sure Adeyemi, like everybody else who's flourishing at Red Bull, is very much playing, doing what he's told to and playing the systems that he's told to. So his positional play might be more important than it sometimes looks as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well for Liverpool. Obviously, a similar system, similarly complicated to get your head around it when you watch it. I mean, if Liverpool were to sort of go in for him and firm up this interest that they supposedly have in him, do you think he'd be a player that naturally would suit at Liverpool, because not just of the Red Bull links, but also the kind of intelligence, I suppose, as a footballer that you seem to be describing there?
I do think so. Yeah, that intelligence is something that people have really noticed. he's openly been working very hard on that, since he was a very young player. He's only 20 now, just turned 20 last week. But ever since he was in his sort of mid-teens, he's been really working on that side of things and trying to make sure that it's not just pace and skills on the ball, but also it's, smart thinking in terms of how to use that the most effectively. And I think naturally the reason that there were links with Liverpool are because he does seem to be the kind of player who would fit really nicely in a Jurgen Klopp side. And certainly the way Liverpool are playing at the moment, I think he's got a lot of the qualities that could make him a very good player. The only question mark I'd say in that regard is that the step up from the Austrian Bundesliga to the Premier League is undoubtedly a massive one, and jumping not just to the Premier League, but immediately up to Liverpool, going for the title, high ambitions. If a player like Adeyemi is going to be the talent that he wants to be and that people want him to become, he's going to need to be a big feature in the team that he moves to. And whether he could make the jump and become a starter in that Liverpool front three, he's got the right fit for it. If it was a game of FIFA, you wouldn't hesitate to stick him in there. But I'm not sure in the real ins and outs of the Premier League, it would be something that we'd see for the next maybe 1 or 2 years, and perhaps that makes Liverpool a little bit less of an appealing destination for him, despite how well he would seem to fit in the sort of jigsaw puzzle of things.
Yeah, you mentioned Patson Daka before. Obviously, he's moved to Leicester in the summer and has done pretty well, really, in terms of adapting. His goal rate is really, really good. He's starting to play a little bit more regularly, having possibly come off the bench a little bit more earlier in the season. I mean, how much do you think that will impact how people view the Austrian Bundesliga in terms of, clubs like Liverpool and other teams around Europe as well can kind of look at him as an example and say, well, he's done it. Maybe others can make that step up from Austria straight to the Premier League, and maybe it's not quite as impossible as you might have thought at one stage in the past.
It's a really good question, actually, and I think these kind of pathways do actually really help. I think they not only give fans the belief that it is possible, they also give the players themselves the belief. The pathway's already been trodden. The Premier League, he knows exactly how he stacks up against Patson Daka. He's played with him in training for season after season. He knows exactly what his relative skills are. And if he can look at what Patson Daka is doing in the Premier League, he must be thinking, hey, I fancy a bit of that for myself. So I'm sure if Patson can do it at Leicester, then I'm capable of doing it in the Premier League too. So I think these things can play quite a big role, actually. I can't say that they always do, but there's definitely potential for it to be quite a big factor. It's it changes a complete unknown into something where there's actually quite a lot of statistics and also personal connections, and for these players that's very, very important. So it is a helpful factor. I think it's still difficult though. If you look at Minamino as another example, I think Minamino at Liverpool is actually pretty much doing what Liverpool probably expected him to do, and maybe even what Takumi Minamino expected. It's probably going about according to plan when you look at the value of the transfer and where he fits into that Liverpool side. The problem is maybe with the expectations of the fans, sometimes we get very excited whenever anybody buys anybody, and you expect, if that player is not then immediately or very soon after a part of the first team, then somehow it's a bit of a failure. So I'm not sure how Liverpool fans view Minamino exactly now, but I'd say he's pretty much on track where he's supposed to be, but it does show that there's two different ways. Not everybody can go to the Premier League and slot in straight away, although, albeit Minamino and Adeyemi are different players in a lot of regards anyway.
Yeah, a much younger player as well, someone that Liverpool could potentially mould into the future if they did go for him. But I know there's a lot of other clubs who are interested as well. I know Bayern Munich have been linked at one stage, Borussia Dortmund as well, Sky Germany, I think, the last few days as we record this, reporting that Borussia Dortmund might make an offer for him. I mean, to me, it seems like Dortmund are the most likely destination for him. It seems like a sensible move to go back to Germany, to go to a team where it will be a case of allowing him to develop. Is that one that you think is the most likely case for this player?
I do. I mean, there's been a bit of an interesting sort of journey in this. Bayern Munich seemed like the early destination, going back to the club where he played as a real youngster in his youth days. Going back to Germany in general is always a very attractive proposition for players in Austria, just given the language and the geographical element, but especially between Salzburg and Bayern Munich. A lot of people don't know it. It's literally just over the border. It's a very, very short hop. The two cities are very, very well connected. So in terms of family, friends, social life, Bayern seemed like a great early option, especially given his history there. But then RB Leipzig is always a big player when it comes to Salzburg players. There's no doubt about that. Whatever the club say about the connections and however officially they might have cut some of these Red Bull connections between RB Leipzig and Red Bull Salzburg, there's still obviously a very, very clear link in their transfer dealings. So I think a lot of people early on sort of just shrugged their shoulders and said, yeah, he'll go to Leipzig. But at the moment, it does look like Dortmund is the most likely of the three. As you said, Sky Germany have stated as of late January 2022 that he is already in talks, that the clubs are perhaps already in agreement with everything, and that the last thing to be negotiated would then just be the fee, as in the club have agreed that the player can go at the right fee. The player is happy with Dortmund, potentially. These are the things that are being reported. So as it stands, as we're recording now, as you said, Dortmund certainly look the most likely option. And they do have that. Dortmund occupy a very unusual position in European football, at the moment. And it's that they're a very attractive club for both fans and players. They play a lovely style of football. People love to watch them. They're a very well-supported club. It's a brilliant place. It's a very attractive place for anybody to go. But then at the same time, they are competing for trophies. They're playing Champions League football most of the time. But also they're just shielded. Just on that one level, they're shielded from the kind of pressure that you'd get, certainly in the Premier League. At Bayern, the pressure's at a very high level as well. But perhaps even just with the way it works in Germany, even the pressure at Bayern would be a little less than the Premier League. So I think we were talking about pathways with Patson Daka. The Erling Haaland pathway is a brilliant example then for Karim Adeyemi to follow. And look what Haaland's move has done for his reputation. He's just tearing it up at Dortmund. And I think that's just another thing that falls in favour of the black and yellows.
Yes, it will certainly be interesting to see where he ends up. Thank you very much to Tom Midler for his insight on Karim Adeyemi, and to our other contributors as well for their insight on Jonathan David and Cristopher Nkunku too. It does seem very much like Liverpool need to be making a move for an additional attacker to come in during the summer. It won't be Kylian Mbappe or Erling Haaland, but it might well be one of these three. That's all we've got time for, though, on the latest Blood Red podcast. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.